think we're live.
I think so too.
This is the first time we're doing this, so
A lot of things might go wrong.
yeah. So welcome everybody. It's the 100th episode. Yay! I didn't expect that we would make this many episodes.
Yeah, it's pretty much 2 years, right?
Mhm.
We started in June, I think, early June.
I think
Yeah.
after maybe 5 episodes, we were already sort of running out of ideas. But then it turned out not to be that bad.
Yeah,
Um,
time went by pretty fast.
we'll wait a bit with answering questions, maybe see if people tune in.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh well, there's some
And
people in the chat already. Congratulations! Oh, that's nice.
thank you. Cool.
Thank you.
We also have Morgan with us, who will watch the chat and pick up any questions that we might miss while we are talking about other things. And we'll see how we'll figure this out. And he will post these questions to us, hopefully.
Yes.
We'll see how many we can answer. So the idea is that we will do this something like 3/4 of an hour, something like that.
Yeah, we have a hashtag up there.
Yeah,
On Florian's head, yes. Ask Swift Talk. You can tweet at us, and hopefully we'll read it. You can also ask questions in the chat, and yeah, maybe we can start with the first question.
Yeah, let's just get going here. Do we have an easy one to start with?
Yeah, we have 2 people asking almost the same question, and they're wondering how we make playgrounds work so well, and
Yeah.
why they work so well for us.
Yeah. So, well, I think first of all, there's not a lot of video editing involved. For the most part, for what we do, they work pretty well.
Yeah.
There's one major exception to that. So we did an episode once with Brandon.
Yeah, at the Kickstarter, and this, I think it took us maybe 2 hours to record the episode.
Yeah.
Most of the time we were just waiting on playgrounds to either launch or compile or whatever.
Yeah.
It was just horribly broken.
But that was also asking a lot, basically.
Yeah.
So that was really heavy stuff that we tried to do there.
It depends a bit also on the version of Xcode, and if you're lucky. Like if you're lucky, Xcode is great and the playgrounds work, and sometimes all of a sudden it's a major pain in the butt. And
Yeah.
now in the current Xcode, it's horrible again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, and the other thing we should mention is also that usually we have this little MacBook Air, my old 11-inch MacBook Air on the desk, because it's nice to not have a huge computer here on the desk. But we are just remote desktoping into a state-of-the-art MacBook Pro with this one. So the playgrounds are a pain to use on this MacBook Air, but
Yeah, and we're not remote desktoping just to pretend somehow. But when we record, then we have QuickTime running on the MacBook Pro, and this spins up the fans,
yes.
and that gets picked up by our microphones.
Exactly.
So that's why we want to have the MacBook Pro as far away as possible, the back of our studio,
Yeah.
and then
Exactly. And so since we have the MacBook Pro on the desk today for all the streaming and live stuff we are doing, there might be some fan noise sometimes. We'll see how this goes.
It's the only fan I have. Yeah. So let's see for the next question. Mustafa asks, do we write a full script and rehearse for our episodes, or do we just shoot rushes from an idea, or do we have a completely different process? So yeah, I think Florian, maybe you can start answering.
Yeah. So usually, well, it starts with some sort of an idea. You know, like, wouldn't it be nice to talk about this or to present this, to try this out? And then the most time is spent in preparation, really. So we start to work out the code. We think about how we could present this, how we could break it up into multiple episodes, or what's essential, what can we leave out. Well, and then once we got this down, and we probably went through it a few times, just talking through it, trying to just talk through the episode basically without recording it. Well, sometimes we also just record it with QuickTime, and then we send it to Ole Begemann,
Yes.
who does technical review for us often. So he watches our crappy QuickTime recording and gives us some hints in terms of what we did wrong, what we forgot, what is hard to understand, all these kind of things. That's really great.
Yeah, anything we send to him, we get it back in a better shape.
Exactly. Yeah. And then at some point we go into the studio and start recording.
That's the easy part.
That's the easy part, actually. Yeah. And then once we are done recording, then we have a lot of files to copy, and then I usually edit the video. And then the video, but it's not done at this point. So then the video is sent to Yule, and Yule does the transcripts for us that are on our website. And then the transcript gets sent to Natalie, and Natalie is our copy editor. She does all the copy editing for the transcript on the website.
And it's the same with these two people. Anything we send to them gets better.
Exactly. So there are a lot of people involved and a lot of steps involved. And then at some point we get everything uploaded to the site and it gets published. So it's quite a lengthy process.
I'm trying to see if we can connect the iPhone to get a look behind the scenes, but it looks like we're a little bit unlucky with the connection. Maybe I'll try plugging it out and plugging it in again. That works sometimes.
Try once more. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's see
Cut over to this camera.
if this works.
We have to wait just a second.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So here's Florian.
Yes.
This is us behind the scenes. Here we sit at the desk. We have a preview. We have our cameras and lights and our one light bulb. There's all the soundproofing and the rest of the studio. There's me. Hello. And we're back at Florian. So this is what it looks like for us behind the scenes when we record. Yeah.
So that's the process that we go through for each episode. And then in the end, when we did a good job preparing and recording, then there's not too much work in post involved.
Yeah, exactly. Let's switch to the next question. So let's see if we can get the question up. Here we go. So Chris asks he's mentioning that he's enjoying the Forms library series, but keeps wondering how do we modify the library so that the password section gets hidden entirely when the hotspot is disabled. And then I asked him further for some more elaboration, and he says, well, he really wants to know how do you show and hide things and how do you generate new contents. So this is the one thing where we prepared some code.
Yes.
For today, and it turns out it's both easy and not so easy.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe we can start with showing the code.
So this basically is dovetailing into these last 6 episodes I think we did.
Yes.
Building a form library.
So here we have what Chris wants, right? When we select and deselect, we should see the hotspot form or not.
Yeah.
And the way it works in code, we can switch back, is, let's see, the hotspot form, I think it's at the bottom. We have a UI switch and it sets the key path to is enabled. And then in the section, we added a new property is visible. And that's also connected to the is enabled. So whenever is enabled changes, the section changes as well.
So basically the API to make this work is still very simple. So you manage to just expose an extra parameter on the section with the key path binding.
Exactly.
And when the value behind this key path is false, then the section gets hidden.
Yes.
So that's very nice that it's still clean
Yes,
to
exactly.
the outside.
Yeah, so let's look at a little bit of the implementation. So if we open forms.swift, we can see over here in the section, we now have an additional property visible. And then the form view controller, it keeps track of which sections are there, which sections are visible. And whenever something changes, we compute what needs to be inserted and deleted. So that logic is a little bit tricky, but you can hide it inside the library and we can clean it up someday.
Yeah. So there's basically two parts to make this work. The one is to just add this visible key path binding, and then just see what value it currently has and make the section hidden or not. But then the other part that does the major work behind the scenes are these changes to the form view controller that take the old sections, the new sections, and make a diff basically.
Yes.
And then change the table view.
Yeah.
So it can be done.
Yeah. Yeah, we can show maybe one more example. So if we go back, here is another example that Chris asked about. Like, let's say over here we have selected the United States and a region. So we can go and select the Netherlands, go back, and then select a Dutch region. And so this form changes whenever the country changes. So now we can select the Mexican region. And the way we do this is exactly the same technique. We use key paths to set which country is selected, and then we observe a key path to find out whether or not we should show or hide a section. So the view controller with the region basically has a section for every country, but only one is visible at the same time.
Yeah. So it's still all statically laid out up front, basically, and then we show and hide.
Yeah, we cannot do dynamic stuff yet. And we can show also, let's switch back. We can show a little bit over here in the memory. It only takes 60 megabytes. So while it's definitely less efficient, it's not a big problem. In the form view controller, we can see, let's see over here. This is very interesting, and we'll definitely make a Swift Talk episode about this. Here we're using a key path subscript to compute whether or not to show a section. So we already did 6 episodes in this series, but I think especially also these features, like showing and hiding sections, and that's maybe worth to cover and record 1 or 2 more. We'll see. Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. We can bring up the next question. This is I Chernoff, and they ask how to use the latest and greatest from the iOS SDK and support all platforms at the same time. So do you have an answer there, Florian? Well, I think first we have to insert a disclaimer here that we didn't have to do that for quite a while to have an app maintained over a wide range of SDK versions. And so our immediate experience is limited with that. But I think, well, you have a few options, right? So you can either wrap something and abstract this away, the differences, depending how complex the things are that you are wrapping. Yeah, or you can rebuild it. So that's what Pete Steinberger did with collection views. He wanted to use collection views, so he basically re-implemented all of it. But that's a lot of work, and especially something like collection view, it's almost impossible. It's just so much work. So there's no one magic answer to this. So let's see if we got another question. So Aina asks, many companies who work on native apps are adopting React Native. What's your opinion on React Native? Do you have any opinions? Well, I don't have any informed opinions, really. So the thing is, I've never really worked with React Native beyond trying it out. Conceptually, it shares a lot of ideas with what we covered in our new book, App Architecture, in the Elm Architecture chapter that we have. So this is a Swift implementation, but conceptually it's similar in that you calculate or you compute a virtual view hierarchy from your state, and then the framework takes care of diffing it against the real views. Yeah, and I think that's a really big thing. That makes a lot of things easy, because you don't need to separately write your initial view construction and all the updates. That just all in one code path, and that's really cool. what I also really like, so let me state clearly, I have no experience with React Native except for 10 minutes maybe. But what I really like is that you can just refresh and immediately get feedback. And it would be super nice if Xcode has this sometime. I know there's injection for Xcode and stuff like that. But it would be cool if this is supported out of the box. And so yeah, in React Native, you can just immediately refresh things. I don't know if it's the future because I think there's a really good use case for React Native, but I also really think there's a good use case for what Swift does and what native development does. And I don't think it'll be either or. I think both can coexist. And
I think so too.
Yeah. I don't know. There's room for everything. So let's see if we have more questions. Let's see. Here we go.
Keyboard shortcuts.
Keyboard shortcuts, yeah. So Iqbal asks if Swift is ever going to compete with Python in AI and machine learning.
Well, that's another area of non-expertise for me. So,
Same here.
And especially predicting the future is an area of non-expertise.
Yeah, I'm also pretty bad at that. Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, there are some interesting developments there. Chris Latner is doing some things with his team.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I'm really interested in what's happening there with TensorFlow and Swift. But I'm also very bad at predicting the future. But something big needs to happen, I think, in order for Swift to all of a sudden take over that area, because there's a whole ecosystem out there. And that includes books and tutorials and sample code and everything. And I don't think people are going to switch to Swift just like that. There needs to be some good reason for that, I think. So we don't know. And there's a second question as well. Let's see, from Iqbal. Let's see, here we go. And they ask, where can we learn the best kept secrets of iOS development used by the top App Store publishers? Well, I'm not a top App Store publisher. I don't think you are either.
No, I'm not.
That I know of.
No.
And I think, well, it's a good thing to think about maybe, but I don't believe there are any big best kept secrets. Maybe there are, but then they're secret and we don't know them. Most, I think, to get into the top of the App Store, especially these days, you need a lot of hard work and a lot of luck, I think. And I think many of the top publishers, or especially if it's smaller companies, they'll be happy to share their secrets, because most of it boils down to just putting in the time and effort. Yeah,
I think also that was always my observation, and what I really liked about the iOS developer community also. I always had the sense that this is very open, that everybody is happy to share what they know, and if you ask a question, if you have a problem, or if you ask somebody, how did you implement that, they will just tell you. There are no secrets, no trade secrets really. And it's just experience. It's smart people with experience who learned some good ways of working over time. And in terms of where you can learn that, well, it's good if you have people around who can challenge you, or who can show you things that you wouldn't look at yourself and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's no secrets really. It's just experience.
Gotta put in the time.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next one by Mustafa. And he asks, when demonstrating a high level of architecture techniques in Swift Talk or in a book, do you think about how it would scale in a real-world app with various developers and years of code base? And how do you keep your project clean and understandable?
Well, I think in terms of, do we think about it? Well, we definitely don't put something in our book where we think this would break down immediately once your project goes past 5K lines of code. No, we don't, of course. But then, other than that, I think this whole scaling question is always difficult to answer, because as soon as your project grows, and also especially your team grows, you have a lot of problems at your hand that are not necessarily related to the design pattern you're using. It's a lot about having good processes and enforcing conventions and having just like refactoring your code and not letting things get out of hand. And
there is one big difference, I think, between the different patterns, and that's that some patterns enforce a more strict style.
yes,
So, and others are way looser. And if you have a very loosely defined pattern, it's easier to make a mess. It's not necessary that it becomes a mess because you can establish conventions and rules. But if you don't, then you could have, like, let's say you have one view controller that's written in one style and another that's written in a completely different style.
yeah,
With other architectures, like the Elm Architecture, you don't have that problem. You get other problems. It's definitely not a silver bullet, but
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that also depends a lot on the people who are working on the project. So
Yes.
maybe in one team, it's totally doable to work within a frame or within a design pattern that leaves you quite a bit of freedom to implement things how you see fit, like what works best in the situation. And in other teams, that might not work. So, but yeah. I think every architecture that we cover in the book, for example, is doable in terms of applying it to a big project. We have some very experimental architectures in the book where we don't recommend to use this just for in production right now. But yeah.
Well, at least you need to be aware of the limitations and the problems of each architecture.
Yes.
So, Florian, why do you always look like you're on the brink of laughing? Are you happy, or are you trying not to break character? Okay.
I should look very serious now.
Yes.
Yeah. No, but really, I think it's always it's fun to do this. And
Absolutely.
always, once we are here, we have things prepared and we sit down and record. It's always nice to do this.
Yes.
So I think, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, same here. Yeah. Gira asks if we remember cases where we got stuck in refactoring and we ended up with code that's not so clean. And the second question is, what's our opinion on native mobile dev future?
Well, let's take the first one first, because I used to have this habit. I don't do it that much anymore, but I used to have this habit of trying to do these monster refactorings somehow.
Yes.
I just start with some idea in my head, and then I just go on for hours without code that I can run.
Yes.
And then I just maneuver myself into some dead end and git revert, and then,
I've done this, well, just this morning on that train, I was doing a refactoring, and then I was sort of stuck. It was not necessarily that my code was not clean, but it just didn't really work what I thought. And I find that sometimes when I'm refactoring, a lot of the times I'm refactoring something and I'm understanding the code better and better as I refactor more and more, and then I end up with something nice. And what happened today is, as I was refactoring and understanding better what I was doing, I also learned that I didn't really understand the problem. So at some point I just closed my laptop and I sat down and stared out of the window to try to get a better understanding of the problem. So that's definitely a thing.
And I think also we definitely have in our code bases, we have these kind of things where it just says to do, clean this up,
Yes.
to do, copy and paste. Of course there are these things. There are always these things which could be nicer, which could be better, have a better structure,
Yeah, and as for the future of native mobile development, I'm still very bad at predicting the future, just like before.
Yeah, so I think we'll just skip this one.
Yeah.
We'll see what comes.
Pratamesh asks...
you have to put the question over.
Yes.
Yes.
How many of the advanced Swift topics that we cover is realistically needed to code and publish an indie app? It should be more capable than a calculator, but less capable than Overcast.
Yeah, so the first thing that came to my mind when I read this question is don't underestimate a calculator.
Yes.
I think there are some nice challenges involved, maybe not so much in UI programming, but more in like evaluating these whole things behind the scenes. But what do you think?
Yeah,
Is the stuff we do needed for this?
I think I don't think so. So I would say if you want to build an indie app, just build it. Don't worry too much about whether you use a for loop or a map or a flat map.
Yeah.
All that stuff doesn't really matter when you're trying to ship an app. It starts to matter when your app becomes larger, when you have a bigger team, when you start caring about it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But as long as you can keep shipping apps, it's fine. I know somebody that writes a really successful website, and it's a huge PHP file, one file, and it works, and it's great. And why not, right? Like,
if you can make it work for you.
Yeah. I think it becomes different in a team, and I think it's important to me as a person. I really enjoy taking pride in the code that I write, and I enjoy finding new ways of writing the same thing and finding better ways. But that's also why we're making these videos and writing the books about it. It's not necessarily that you should spend all your time on it. And I see in the chat that Pratamesh asks, by calculator, they mean one of the simpler ones shown in tutorials, not pcalc. I still think it's not so easy. It's not completely straightforward. I think it's something like, I don't know what's the simplest possible app, but
maybe also, at least if you want to make the code beautiful.
Yes.
Also,
Well, when you create a calculator, let's think about what happens. You press 3, and then let's say you press plus. Now, how do you store that state? And then you press 5, and then what do? And then you press times 7.
Mm-hmm.
How do you need to build up a stack and evaluate that stack?
Mm-hmm.
It's not so difficult, but it's definitely not straightforward. At least not for me.
Yeah.
But it's a nice question.
But I agree. So most of the things we do, they are not required to get an app
Yes.
shipped. It's more, maybe also a lot of it is just what personal ambitions and personal interest, and also just learning and to find new ways and
Yes.
be challenged. And
Let's do some live from Twitter. We don't have any slides for these.
I think we actually we do have later. I think Morgan put some
Let's see if I can
new
find
questions from Twitter onto the slides.
Okay, cool.
This works.
Yeah. So Oliver asks, when starting a project, are there any third-party frameworks that you tend to go to straight away, or do you do everything from scratch yourself? Well, since Swift, before Swift, I would use a lot of third-party code, and since Swift, not so much anymore.
Yeah, so me neither, but I also think it has something to do, it just differs so much between people,
Yes.
like their preference there. I think there's something else going on there. I'm also more the type who prefers to have a lot of the code under my own control, and write my own stuff specific to what I need.
Yeah.
And sometimes, of course, it doesn't make sense to write certain things yourself.
Absolutely.
Clearly. But I still prefer it. So my preference is also in this direction.
Yeah.
And then other people just, they use everything they can, and they like it. So I think there's a lot of personal preference in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a nice one. So Jack asks, as veterans of iOS development, do we prefer Swift or Objective-C? For me, it's clearly Swift.
So I haven't written Objective-C for quite a while now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't even have the comparison fresh in my mind. But I would also say definitely Swift.
Hexeter asks, I really like the Elm architecture. Do you think it will be possible to use it in production in the near future? Would you consider starting an open source project to make it a good framework for such a use? People are using the Elm architecture in the Elm language in production, and they're very successful at it. If you want to use what we have, I don't know if we have a license for it already, but we should probably just slap MIT on it and push it out.
Yeah.
I don't really think I realistically have the time to maintain a library.
Exactly, so that's the main issue in this regard. I think in terms of production ready, it depends a bit what you do.
Yeah.
And I think you should just play around with it, create a little side project or something to play around with, try it out, to get a feel for what are the nice things about it, what are the issues you are running into.
Yeah. Well,
because
actually,
it can work in production.
I think people should look at the videos of App Architecture. So probably people who watch this might know, but we just wrote a new book, App Architecture, and we made videos for all of the chapters. And one of the videos is about how to implement the framework for the Elm architecture. And there, I think if you watch that video and then implement it yourself again, to just go through the exercise, you'll notice a lot of the limitations that are there and a lot of the hurdles that you might need to get over before it's production ready. So that's a big thing.
And the interesting part is actually that this video is something like an hour or 10, or approximately, and we implement a just slightly simplified version of the Elm framework. And the only thing is that it doesn't have support for most of UIKit. It just supports the text field and a button. But conceptually, everything you need is there. And then the real work is just to wrap everything UIKit offers.
Yes.
So there's a lot of work involved there.
Well, either everything or everything you need. You can also say, like, I'm going to own all that code, and then you can just add things as you need. And that's what we did, and it worked well.
Yeah.
Here's Lars asking, concerning server-side Swift, do we have any experience in Vapor, Perfect, and Ketura? Which is more mature? I don't really know which is more mature. They're all changing a lot, I think. In some of the episodes we did last year, we wrote our own thing. I think we built it on top of Ketura, but just so that we have something to start with.
That was just, we used a web server component from there, I think. And we switched it out against something custom. Yeah. Like, hence we just talked about third-party dependencies, right?
Yeah. I would do it just like the Point Free guys did. Shout out to Point Free. They made their own stack. And when Swift Neo came out, they were able to just swap it out very quickly. Yeah. Because they almost depended on almost nothing.
Yes. So we never really wrote something big server-side there, so it's hard to say for us. Yes. And I think if we are still planning to do a little bit of server-side stuff here and there, because we want to use some things for our own purposes. But if we do this, we will probably, again, do something on our own just to experiment.
Yes. Yeah. Here's a nice one. Kevin asks, are we planning to do outdoor episodes again? Yes, absolutely, Kevin. So now with the book, we were quite busy. Yes. And it just, well, as you might have seen at the beginning of the stream, or otherwise you can watch back later, we have a bit of a setup, and it takes a long time to set everything up. So that's the reason why we moved to a studio, so we can focus more on the content and less on carrying all the stuff around, setting it up, making sure the mic is okay and the lighting is fine and the cameras are recording and everything.
So in the beginning we had Rick with us, and Rick was our film guy basically, who helped us out with all this stuff. And it was stressful in a sense also, because we had to plan this one day where we record 4 or 5 episodes, and we had to prepare them all to the point, and then we were carrying all the equipment, and we were setting up and tearing down for maybe 3 hours in total or something, or 4 hours, and it was exhausting somehow. And that's why we moved into a studio environment. But now that we are settled here, we absolutely plan to come up with a way to do some more spontaneous outdoor episodes.
So the other thing is, I moved to the countryside. I moved just outside of Berlin, so that's why I have time on the train to build form library things. But it also means that we have a nice place to shoot things, so we might try that out sometime soon.
And you are exploring the area running, right? So you have a good idea.
Norman asks, how do we keep it fun? Really? I don't know. It's just fun.
Yeah, it is a lot of. I mean, we get so much opportunities to play around with things and to just like look at what we did the last year writing this book. Like, when did you get the chance to write a simple app and implement it in, I don't know, not just the 5 we published, but maybe 10 different architectures, and just play around with that and talk to other people about it, and so it's nice.
Yeah, part of the time,
always
part of the
interesting.
thing is also taking the time to do things right. That's really fun when we have that time. So we learned a lot doing the MVC application, for example, and it might not sound like MVC is very exciting, but it turned out like implementing MVC and doing that right, we learned so much, and we learned exactly where the limitations are and where you need to be aware.
Yeah.
In the chat, I see that Fruitcoder asks if we will attend any conference this year to promote our book, maybe UIConf. Well, I won't be at UIConf this year. I don't think you will be either.
Nope.
But we will definitely be at some conferences. We're not sure yet if there's going to be a functional Swift conference, hopefully this year. And yeah, there is a bunch of conferences that we're talking to, but nothing is completely confirmed yet. It depends a bit on our schedules, and not anytime very soon, but hopefully
Later this year.
later this year.
Yeah.
Let's see. So Adiki asks about app architecture. Is the book final? If not, when are we planning to make a final release? So
yeah, we are really, really close. So we had this project in early access for a few months now. And we just finished up basically incorporating all the edits from Natalie, our copy editor, and again, Ole Begemann, technical review, did a lot of helpful work there. And we just finished up incorporating all of that, and it should happen very soon. So we are not going to announce a fixed date yet, I think.
Okay.
Or do we?
No.
I don't know. But it should be very soon.
Maybe next week.
We're shooting for next week.
Yes. we were almost done in September, actually. And then we decided to do things in a very different way. And then we rewrote everything. And then just a few months ago, before the pre-release, the week before the pre-release.
2 days, I think.
2 days before the pre-release, we decided to restructure everything once again. But we were, in both cases, almost done. And the last restructuring was really more moving things around and rewriting everything. And we've been done with the writing for quite a while. But then, as things go with these books, the moment we send it to Ola, we get really good feedback. And then you need to go back and think and reorganize, and it's the same with Natalie, and also the same with rereading things. It takes a long time to make something nice, but now we're really, really almost done. Rui asks, what features from other programming languages would we like to see in Swift, and why?
I think that's a question for you.
Yeah, so there are so many things. I really liked writing Haskell, and I would like to see some features, and definitely I would like to see more support for writing more precise types. I think Swift is already really good at this, but there's definitely more opportunity to do things there. And at the same time, I wish Swift would also look at things like Elm, which has really good type error. So now in Swift, when you make a mistake that's a type level problem, you get very obscure errors sometimes. Sometimes it's also pretty good, and any effort spent on that would be nice. At the same time, I think something like coroutines, which is, I think, planned, would be really cool as a way to do async programming. And I don't know, there are so many interesting things everywhere. For me, it's a little bit always like Christmas to see what they come up with, and then you get this new feature and we can play around with it. I don't know. I wanted to see something like lenses, which is not necessarily a language feature, but then Swift came with key paths, and that's much better than what I could have imagined. I think there's a question in the chat, 2 questions.
So the last one is from Blue Sky 31 enable, something like that. What do you think about child view controllers? Would you compose a screen with them or prefer to use simple subviews? We've definitely used child view controllers.
Yeah, they work great for composition.
Yeah, I think so as well. Sometimes, I think that's also sometimes that something that is easy to forget that you can do this is also just create more of your more custom views that maybe integrate a bunch of other views. I think there's something to that as well, but it depends a bit if you. Child view controllers are really nice once you have a bit more coordinating work to do with other components, stuff like that.
Yeah, and if you want to put if you want to integrate with the model,
Exactly,
that's easier to or nicer to put in a controller than to put in a custom view. Yeah. And Alan asked if we ever use SSS for simple server scripting. For example, let's see, he uses it for Ruby. I'm not exactly sure what is meant, but I hope we can write simple servers in Swift one day.
No, I don't.
Yeah,
I've never used this.
There's a question by Roland. Let's see if we can get the question up. Here we go. Looking back when we started using Swift, what are the 3 things we wish to have known back then?
Yeah, so the biggest thing, well, I think there were 2 big things in the beginning. When Swift came out, you were really excited about Swift because you had this functional programming background, right? You saw all these features that were suddenly the things that were possible. And so you really dived into it, and we were working on scenery at the time, a Mac app, and we wrote this with Swift 1.0 basically. So that was and so I remember that the 2 things that were really hard for me were like working with structs, enums, value types, basically wrapping my head around how value types work, how Swift handles in-out parameters with value types, this kind of stuff. This was hard. And so, I wish if I would have known back then what I know now about it, it would have been easier. And generics is the other big one.
For me, it's also value types. I didn't really understand how they worked in Swift, and I thought mutation was something to be avoided, at least in functional programming. Yeah. But once I learned how the mutating keyword works in Swift with value types and how in-out works, I really started to like it. It has the same benefits of pure programming or pure functional programming, but in a much more natural way, at least for a language like Swift. And I really like that as well. And maybe one thing we can tell is also we've organized workshops, and there, one of the big things is what we notice is that there, well, in my opinion, 3 big things that people can leverage that to really improve their code, which they don't really know. So value types are one of them. I think generics is even bigger. Yes. I think working with generics can really pay off. Once you learn them, there are so many things that you can improve with generics. It's not something that you need to use, but once you get it, it feels like a really nice tool, I think. And the third thing is, of course, functions. I think getting good with functions and composing them and passing them around and really using them as first-class things is also something that can really pay off if you invest some time in learning how to do all the functional stuff. I think it's also a danger because you can get way too much into functional programming, but there are some really nice things there. Yeah, true.
So what else do we have?
Well,
something in our slide deck, or is there?
Somebody asks in the chat, are there situations where you miss Objective-C or where you would even prefer Objective-C? What about you?
No.
Me neither.
I can't. Well, so in the beginning, when we first used Swift 1.0 and then 1.2 when we were writing scenery. I was cursing a lot about Swift, so this was pretty horrible back then. It was interesting at the same time because we really got a lot of hands-on experience with the language early on. But the process of building a real project was very, very painful. I just had crashes, so much crashes. And back then, during in this project, I often thought about, well, wouldn't it be better if we would just use Objective-C for it?
Yeah.
By now, no, not anymore. No.
I do think, I honestly believe that Swift is way better in almost every respect. But the interesting thing is, once in a year when I fire up an Objective-C project again, it's so fast. Like it compiles, it just
the build
runs.
process.
Oh,
yeah,
it's so
the
good.
Build,
That's maybe one part I missed,
Yeah.
but maybe in 10 years we'll have the same thing for Swift, or computers will just be really, really fast. I don't know.
Let's see.
Let's see. Lars also asks if he says he likes our videos, but also likes point-free videos. Have we considered bundling them with a discount? We have not considered it, and I think we're completely separate companies, so I don't know if it makes any sense. Monica asks, while creating an app project, do you also plan your code so that whenever Swift update comes, you have less mess? No, not really. I think it's hard to plan for that.
Yes.
If they move things around or rename things, it's we hope that the compiler fix-its will help us.
Yeah, so I think, this will get better with time, right? So the worst transition was Swift 3, I think. It was really, really, even for a small project, it was hard, quite a lot of work. And I think by now, going forward, it's not too painful.
Yeah.
So I think planning ahead, I mean, it's if you follow along a little bit with the new proposals and what will be what's upstream somehow, what will be coming out, that's helpful.
Yeah.
But really planning for it in your code, we don't
No.
really do this.
Let's do the final question. I
Yes.
think it's long enough. So Aina asks, do we prefer Core Data or Realm? Well, you wrote the book.
Well, yeah, exactly. So I don't have any kind of production experience with Realm. So I've tried it out. And I think you have to do the same. I think you just have to try both out. And Core Data definitely is the much bigger beast somehow, which just has so many features tacked on and so many customization points tacked on for so many different use cases. And so it's probably the more complex thing. But I think it really depends on your project and take a look at it. I cannot really compare. Well, I'm not deep enough into Realm to tell.
Well, I think we should wrap it up. We're going to celebrate that we managed 100 episodes and hopefully make 100 more.
Yeah.
If you like this, let us know. Maybe we can do it again sometime.
Yeah.
We'll also definitely go back to making more forums episodes and a lot of other episodes. And
Exactly. And we'll, of course, also publish this as a regular episode. We will edit the recording of this and put it up on our website as usual. And then we'll be back with a regular episode next week.
I know something we forgot.
Yeah? What did we forget?
We need to do the clap. But we cannot end at the clap because I need to press the button to stop streaming.
Yeah, and the intro, the outro needs to.
We have no outro. Oh my god. Well, we'll do the clap and then we'll stop streaming.
Exactly.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.